My name is Jacob and welcome to another episode of Raw and Uncut on the Abrasive Conversations platform. Today, this morning, it's a Thursday morning, it's the 22nd of May. I am recording this episode and I'm recording this episode as a proud South African. I feel today the same way I felt when South Africa won the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup, the Cup of Nations, or whenever South Africa thrives in something. When they are triumphant, then we celebrate. And today is one of those moments that we have to celebrate. So this episode is about President Cyril Ramaphosa's successful visit in the United States, and especially successful conversations and negotiations with the United States of America. So yesterday, I wanted to watch the live broadcast of the conversation, the White House meeting between President Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa and our delegation. And when I got home, I saw there was no Wi-Fi, there was no reception. I couldn't do anything. So I had to rush to the nearest mall. So when I got to the mall, I signed up for that Wi-Fi and I was able to sit down and watch the whole broadcast. And from that broadcast, I was able to have a number of takeaways. It's quite a few. I wrote it down here on my phone, and it's a lot, and I don't want to go through it. So because this is our political commentary, so I'm looking at some of the commentary and things that other commentators didn't say or political analysts didn't say, and then I hone into that. So the one thing that was clear for me from the delegation and our conversations with the United States and their delegation is that South Africa, 30 years into our democracy, is still largely a very divided country with different interests. And it was quite clear in that space that the interests were different. And I could see that even the ideological differences came true. So we went there with a GNU type of representation. John Steenhuisen was in the room and got an opportunity to speak on some of the questions that Trump's asked with regards to the so-called white genocide in South Africa. And he responded to it. But the remarks that he made was in such a sense that I could see that it is not the same way that the ANC cadre or ANC supporter would have spoken out. For example, he called Julius Malema a rebel. We had to keep this rebel out of government. That's why we decided as a GNU. At that moment, I looked at the reaction, the facial expression of President Cyril Ramaphosa, and I could see on his face that he didn't entirely agree with the type of remark that Steenhuisen made. The other interest that I saw was what Julius Malema called white monopoly capital. Now, I am with President Thabo Mbeki on this. There is no such thing as a white or black monopoly capital. There is just monopoly capital. But what Julius and other people are referring to, that it's largely concentrated in the hands of white people, especially white Afrikaners in South Africa. But that's a conversation for another time. And you could clearly see the strong interest of this type of monopoly coming through. So Johan went there to protect his interests and his companies within in the United States. And the one thing that he said that was so telling was we need to get Starlink and we need to get Elon Musk on board. So there's clearly a conversation between rich people and rich white people at levels that we as the ordinary South African do not have access to. And then in the room you also have sporting legends, and those sporting legends, some is very diplomatic, but you can see a person like Retief Goosen is extremely hurt. And then we also have the star of the moment, Zungiswa Losi. Brilliant response and rebuttal to some of the claims that Trump made, which represented the trade union. So it was quite a different groups that were represented in that specific room, and that claim came clear to me. So we live in South Africa, which is still a very divided country. So if you go to most cities, you will see the cities still have the same racial segregation of apartheid. If you go to smaller towns, you see the same things. And then at the largest global event at scale, then you see that these interests is differently represented and differently pushed for. And it is this difficulty that we as South Africans are trying to negotiate on a daily basis. So, of course, when you are a divided country, there will always be moments where there is disagreements because different interests is pushing into different directions. So even though we have different interests, the one thing that you cannot take away from any of those people that was in that room with Trump yesterday is that they are proudly South African. They believe in South Africa, they believe in the Constitution, and they believe in what we can achieve if our different interests is aligned, and if we, at some states, it's a give and take. So it's a compromise. If we compromise, in some instances, our interests. So that's the main political takeaway. And for political parties like the EFF and MK, the Patriotic Alliance, those parties that is now on the radar of South Africa and become choices, this is one of the things that you have to consider. You have to consider that this is a divided country with different interests and different interest groups. So if you are running to be in power and lead this country, then you cannot push one agenda. You have to push the agenda of different interest groups in South Africa. And it will take time until the playing field is level or largely level in South Africa. Until then, it's a negotiation. It's a negotiation between these different interest groups. And that brings me to the second point that I noticed yesterday. President Cyril Ramaphosa is a master negotiator. There was many times where people didn't stick to the script, and that script was trade and resetting the relationship with the United States of America. That is what is on his agenda, and that's what he wanted. He didn't want to get sidetracked by claims of white refugees and white genocide. He wanted a trade deal. He wanted a reset of the U.S. and South African relations, and that's what he wanted. So many times when people got sidetracked by the different types of politics, President Cyril Ramaphosa brought it back. This is what we are here for. But the other thing that I saw how good of a negotiator he is sometimes you have to make yourself smaller and stroke the ego of the big bully in the room so that you can literally disarm him. So Trump was really armed and fired up when he started talking about these claims about genocide, and especially when he started playing the videos of Julius Malema chanting they must kill the farmers, and when he showed the videos and he have the pages, he was really convinced that he had a case. But when he gave over to some other people, like Johan Els, Retief Johan Rupert, to speak, what became more and more clear is that he's getting disarmed. And when the media started throwing these curveballs and brought it back to genocide and all of this, what President Ramaphosa did is always brought it back to trade. So even when it became this whole thing about genocide, he pushed it and said, we all face criminality. And because we are a violent country and faces criminality, we need investment in security and drones and all of those type of security tools that we can get to police rural areas much better. And he always brought it back to that specific point. And at the end of that interaction between President Ramaphosa and Cyril, President Ramaphosa and Donald Trump, you can see he was completely charmed and disarmed by South Africa. So this is where I saw that the years in Cosatu and trade union and his negotiations, the key role he played during the negotiations for a democratic and free South Africa, it really paid off. He just know what to say, when to say, and how to say to disarm, especially the police in the room. So I tip my hat to you, President Cyril Ramaphosa. We can be proud. But now I want to bring something else into it. This is the third point. That President Cyril Ramaphosa is quite pro-black. So I don't know why the EFF have always painted President Cyril Ramaphosa as this person that is pro-white monopoly capital. So that's the agenda they push. But what I've seen, and there's something even that Nglozi is saying, is that if you start looking at what President Cyril Ramaphosa is doing, then you will see he's quite pro-black. And yesterday was one of the biggest examples of his pro-black. So in that room, Trump gave the opportunity so that the white males can speak. So Retief spoke, Ernie Els spoke, and Johan Rupert spoke. President Cyril Ramaphosa made it a point to steer the conversation towards Zungiswa Losi, the president of Cosatu, who is a black woman, to have a say. And she completely killed it. And it's that moment when she started speaking and bringing the testament of black women and how black elderly women is experiencing rural crime, that you could see that Donald Trump is completely disarmed. And the one thing that she was so powerful and so skilled in terms of holding the public space is that not for one moment did Trump took his eyes off Zungiswa Losi. So if Trump didn't do that, if President Cyril Ramaphosa didn't do that, then you would have another black woman that is silenced in that space, and it was white men and one black male that were speaking on behalf of South Africa. But in that moment, President Cyril Ramaphosa made a black woman visible and made sure that the world know that there's powerful black women in South Africa, that is strong leaders that can hold their own in the world space. And for that, President Cyril Ramaphosa, I tip my hat. But now I want to go to the fourth point, and it's about this slogan, kill the boer. And as Trump was playing the videos where the EFF and the MK party was chanting this struggle song, I finally understood the anxiety of white people in South Africa. If there was white people in South Africa singing a apartheid song that is advocating for the killing of black people in South Africa, it would have not sit well with the majority. But the majority would also feel a little bit uneasy if this right-wing groups start chanting in groups, online and in public spaces that they need to be killed. Even though if it's a relic of the past or it has some level of historical significance. So for once, I could understand the anxiety that this historical struggle song is creating in white people. Now I know the court case ruling and I know what happened with regards to that song, but in the spirit of Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu that is no longer with us, sometimes we have to let go of something of the past to include people into the spaces. So if that song is creating large levels of anxiety amongst the minority of white people in South Africa, then I think it's time for us to park that particular song. So it's important for us to have this conversation about the song, and I'm now of the opinion that it creates a high level of anxiety amongst white people in South Africa, and rightfully so. So they rightfully can be upset about the song, and they can use this in any political sense to make a case for whatever type of violence that they are experiencing. So the president of the EFF, Julius Malema, if you listen to this particular clip, you have the opportunity to become the president of South Africa at one point in the future. And being the president of South Africa is not only about pushing your particular interests, it's also about protecting the minorities' interests, like the white farmer. So thinking about that in your future trajectory, sometimes you have to think about these things and see what this could mean for more unity in South Africa. The type of unity that is embedded in our coat of arms, where it proudly states that we are united in our diversity. So if we want to be united in our diversity, then it's important for us to rethink about some of these things that creates anxiety amongst minority groups in South Africa. President Jacob Zuma, if you're watching this, I'm giving you the same type of message that I gave to Julius. You have led this country before, and you know that you have to work with minorities groups. You have met most of the world leaders, and you have represented South Africa on the world stage. Your party and you, or whoever is going to be leader of the MK party, also have an opportunity or the possibility to become the president of this country. Because the reality is there's going to be more and more coalition governments, and it will, in the future, bring you into conversation whether you can be your party can take the presidential seat of this country. With that being said, think about the representation of this particular song on the world stage. So let me also know what you think in the comments, what we should do about this particular song and how we can include more of the minority voices in parties like the ANC, the EFF, and even MK. So ladies and gentlemen, that is mostly my take on this. There is more, but I don't want to make this video too long. So I am proud to be South African. I'm proud of the delegation that went there, and I am extremely proud of Zungiswa Losi. She showed the world what black women are capable of, but those silent voices throughout the struggle, what they were always doing behind the scenes. And that is Ma Winnie Mandela, Ma Sisulu, and there is many others like Ma Tambo. So all of these people, especially those women, carried a large part of the struggle, and they made sure that most of the men stayed the course and that they will not steer from it. And they were the pillars and the backbone of the struggle. So I salute you, and I appreciate what you have done for this. And in Zingiswa, you proudly follow in the footsteps of these great women of our past. So thank you for doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and I will see you in another episode.